Good day everyone. Again, welcome to the video recorded discussions of the last two modules in the midterm period. So this will be the discussion of module number 10 and 11 for the subject PS1, the child and adolescent learners and learning principles. Okay, so first let's discuss module number 10 muna. So, introduction. In the span of just few years, newborn infants who neither speak nor understand any language become young children who comment, question, and express their ideas in the language of their community. So, language is a critical factor in children's adjustment. This section provides you with what you need to know when it comes to how language develops and the way children eventually understand what is being said and what they just read. So the objectives of this module class is at the end of the module, students should be able to, number one, distinguish the functions between first and second language in the delivery of instruction. Number two, conduct class presentations of the language theories. Number three, observe and record a parent-child interaction. 4. Analyze the scripts in the parent-child interaction. And then for the last one, write a position paper on how children learn their language when it comes to their first and second language. So for module number 10 class, it also covers our chapter 10, which entitles Principles of Language Development. So this chapter gives you a background of how language is learned and the psychological theories concerning language development. So language is defined as a communication system in which a limited number of signals that can be sounds or letters. Or in other way around, it can be gestures in case of the sign language used by the deaf people. So they can be combined according to agreed upon rules to produce an infinite number of messages. So class, to master a spoken language such as Filipino, kasi our national language is Filipino. So a child must learn basic sounds. How sounds are combined to form a words. And then how words are combined to form meaningful statements. And then what words and sentences mean. And how to use language effectively in social interactions. So language development, of course, plays a crucial role in education. So it is the principal medium of instruction, both through the air and in written form, as well as affecting social interaction and development in all areas. So how well children acquire language will have a marked effect on their academic performance and their social adjustment. So yes, class, it is very true that language development is our main um, or have a very big impact in terms of education. In language development kasi, this is the very first thing um, that we are using when we face our students. So, for example na lang, kapag ka nasa isang classroom po tayo, 'di ba? The very first thing that we are going to do is to greet and to welcome and then talk in our students. So, we are using language development in that area. And then in all aspects in education, we are using language development for us to be informed, for us to share a knowledge, and then for us to have a good communication between the teacher and the students. So language development in any language naman that we are using kapag ka nagtuturo po tayo, um, in any language that we are using, kapag ka nagtuturo tayo class, hindi naman na yun tinitignan kapag ka nasa classroom setting na po tayo. Our goal there is kung um, naintindihan and then na-convey ng maayos yung message ng lesson, especially to those little children that we are teaching sa mga elementary level. Kasi we cannot use a specific language lang kapag ka nagdi-discuss tayo kasi they may not understand what it is you're saying or kung ano yung dinidiscuss mo kapag ka isang medium ng language lang yung ginagamit natin. So, in education, language development plays a very vital role in developing our communication with our students. Not only with the relationship ng teacher at ng students, nag-grow or nade-develop din yung relationship ng peer-to-peer students kapag yung language development nila is on progress kapag ka nasa loob or nasa labas man ng school. Okay, so next class will be the 5 components of language. So we have phonemes, morphemes, syntax, semantics, and then pragmatics. So those are the 5 components of language. So first one, we have the phonemes. So when we say phonemes, these are the basic units of sound in any given language. These are the sounds we create with the letters of the alphabet. So a phoneme class is the smallest unit of sound in speech. So when we teach reading, we teach children which letter represents those sounds. So for example, the word hat has a 3 phonemes. So it is letter A, and then letter T. So for the word, for letter H, we have the sound ha. And then for the letter A, we have the sound a. And then for the letter T, we have the sound t. Kaya kapag ka nagtuturo tayo ng word, it is very important that we must first teach the sound of the alphabet in order for the children to read a specific word. Hindi pwedeng ipamemorize lang natin yung alphabet from letter A up to letter Z, tapos yung corresponding sounds nila is hindi alam nung isang bata. Kasi kapag ganun ang ginawa natin class, matagal silang matututong magbasa. For an example, dito sa word nating hat, 'di ba? Hindi nila mababasang hat 'yan kapag hindi nila alam yung corresponding sounds ng letter H, ng letter A at ng letter T. So hindi naman nila pwedeng basahin 'yan ng HAT. So, parang nag-spelling lang kapag gano'n. So, it is very important to take note of this class that when we are teaching young children on how they are going to read, it is very important that you must teach them kung ano yung sound or corresponding sound ng mga letters from letter A up to letter Z in order for them to memorize the sound, and then kapag na-memorize na nila yung sound, they are able now to read kahit yung 3 letter word lang. We have the hat, mat, map, not, yung mga ganun. Madali nilang mababasa yan kasi alam nila yung corresponding sounds ng mga letter. So, i-try nyo class if that will be our way in teaching in teaching them on how to read. It is very fast for the side of the children to learn kung paano basahin yung isang word. So that is what we call phonemes, yung sound, the basic sound of a letter. Next is we have morpheme. So when we say morpheme, it is the smallest grammatical unit of speech. It may be a word like place or an element of a word like re and ed, as in reappeared. So A morpheme class is the smallest linguistic part of a word that can have a meaning. So, on the other words, it is the smallest meaningful part of a word. So, examples of morpheme class are the word eat, the word date, and then the word week. So, in any words that has a meaning class, it is considered as a morpheme. Unlike doon kay phoneme class, pag phoneme kasi, ang tinutukoy lang natin doon is yung sound. Yung sound ng specific letter or ng language that is given. So, yun yung sa phoneme. Dito kasi sa morpheme class, it is the smallest unit of speech na may ibig sabihin or may meaning. Next is we have number 3, syntax. So, when we say syntax, it is the structure of language, the grammar. So, it is the arrangement of words into a sentence that makes sense in a given language. So, syntax also refers to the rules and principles that govern sentence structure in a language. For example, how words and phrases may be joined. So, when we say syntax class, it is the grammatical structure of sentences. So, it is also the format in which words and phrases are arranged to create sentences is called syntax. So, examples class are the sentence, the boy jumped happily. Another sentence is, the boy happily jumped. And another example is, happily, the boy jumped. So this shows class that by rearranging just one word in a sentence, a varied syntax is formed. So each is grammatically correct and acceptable English language form. So class sa syntax kasi it is the process on how words are joined to form a sentence. So, doon sa binigay kong example class, yung mga word kasi, it depends on the meaning kung paano mo sila ginamit sa isang sentence. So, for example, na-jumbled lang yung mga words doon sa example natin kanina. But it has the same meaning. It clearly stated lang na the boy jumped happily. But in other in other aspect class, pwedeng mabago yung meaning nito on how are we going to replace yung mga words na ginamit po natin. So it can have the same meaning or it can have different meaning on how are we going to join the words to form a language. So, yun yung trabaho ni syntax. Next is we have semantics or meaning of language. So, infants come to understand many words before they can produce them. That is, comprehension or our perception is ahead of production or our expression in language development. So, 10 months old can comprehend an overage about 50 words. So, when we say semantics class, it is a branch of linguistics that looks at the meanings of words and language, including the symbolic use of language. It also refers to the multiple meanings of words as well. So, for example, class, a child be called as a kid, boy, girl, son, or daughter. So when we say kid class, it pertains to a boy, pwedeng girl, pwedeng son, or daughter. So si semantics class, when we talk semantics, it talks about the meaning of the meaning of the word. So ibig sabihin, a word must have a variety of meaning depending on how are we going to use it. Next is the word run. So has a many meanings also. So we have physically running, or to depart, or go, or pwede rin sabihin natin, I have to run, or spend, I have to run a business to support my family. So another meaning na naman iyon ng run. Hindi lang yung run na tatakbo ka. Next, or even a snag in a pair of hose. a run in my house. I have a run in my house. So, another meaning ulit for a run. So, sabi ko nga kanina, class, semantics is the way we understand the meaning of the words depending on how are we going to use it in a sentence. So the given example class, the given examples of semantics seeks to describe how words are used, not to prescribe how they should be used. So yun nga po yung sinasabi ko sa inyo class, meaning of the words are understood depending on how are we going to use it in a sentence. Next is, for the last component of language is pragmatics. So, pragmatics refers to the use of application of language. It is typically viewed as a social aspect of language. So, the term pragmatics is used in contrast to semantics. Pragmatics refers to how words are used in a practical sense. Words can mean something different depending on the context in which it is used. So when we say pragmatics class, this is much more deeper than semantics. Sa semantics kasi, ang tinitignan lang natin doon yung meaning ng word, kung paano ito ginamit sa isang sentence. But in pragmatics class, we are dealing with more deeper meaning of a word when we use it in a sentence. So for example, number one example is, will you crack open the door? I am getting hot. So semantically, kapag ginamit natin si semantically, the word crack would mean to break, sirain. Crack nga, diba? Ibig sabihin, sirain yung pinto. But pragmatically, we know that the speaker means to open the door just a little bit, to let in some air, kasi nga mainit. So, yun yung kay pragmatics class, yun din naman yung use niya pagdating sa language. We are identifying the deeper meaning of a word. Next is, another example, number 2, I heart you. So, semantically, heart refers to an organ in our body that pumps blood and keeps us alive. So, yun yung semantically na meaning ng heart. It is a part of a human organ. But, however, in pragmatically way naman, heart in the sentence means love. So, hearts are commonly used as a symbol for love. And to heart someone has come to mean that you love someone. Kaya pag sinabi natin, I heart you, it is the same way as we are saying, we love someone. Kasi diba, heart pertains to love, heart symbolizes love. Kaya pag sinabi natin, I heart you, we are also saying, I love you. So, ganun po yun. Sa may pragmatics class, we are dealing with the deeper meaning of a word on how are we going to use it in a sentence. Okay, so next class, we move for the theories of language development. So, language development is a slow process that starts during early childhood, allowing children to grasp the spoken word and communicate. So, the emergence of language in human children comes after a period of significant development of the brain. This term also applies to the origin of language and why humans developed language as a communication tool in the first place. So, language development is a vast field with contributions from various disciplines. This includes linguists, anthropologists, archaeologists, genetics, neurologists, and computer scientists, to name a few. So when we say theories of language development class, we will discuss here the different theories on how language development is, on how language development can be developed in a certain child or in a certain person. So as stated nga kanina, si language development is already given in our early childhood. During our early childhood, we have a language, we are starting to develop our language. So first, let's talk about the nativist Perspective by Noam Chomsky. So we have the LAD, the LAD, Language Acquisition Device. The human capacity for language is a device residing in the human brain that takes as its input certain information from the environment and produces as its output the ability to speak and understand a language. So Noam Chomsky's theory on language development explained that the nativist perspective believes that nature's is the most crucial in the process of language development. So dito class, kay Noam Chomsky, when we say the nativist theory of language development, it stresses that humans are born with the ability to develop language. So according to Chomsky's theory, infants have an innate ability to learn language. From a very early age, we are able to understand the basics of the language. So for instance, Chomsky argued children are able to understand the appropriate order of words from a young age. So instead of saying juice, I want, children know to say I want juice. So Chomsky noted that this is similar across languages. So children are able to do this even before they have developed much of a vocabulary. So this is an important point for Chomsky because it underscores his theory that children are able to understand the structure of rules even before they know many words. So basically class, ang sinasabi lang dito ni Noam Chomsky is children have a ability to develop language at the very early age. Parang sabihin na natin 1-year-old pa lang yung bata is, the development of the language is already there. Kasi he or she can now understand some words na palagi niyang naririnig. So kapag palagi natin itong naririnig, or palaging naririnig ito ng bata, na-adapt nito, tapos eventually sinasabi na rin niya yung naririnig niya. At the same time, kapag palagi niya itong sinasabi, naiintindihan na niya yung meaning ng sinasabi niya. And then, when we say language acquisition device, so what is responsible for this? The language acquisition device, or the LAD, is a hypothetical area of the brain that explains how children can learn languages so quickly. By hypothetical, we mean that if you were to take a look inside of a person's brain, you would not see a section labeled LAD. Kasi wala naman talaga class. In parts of our brain, you cannot see the word LAD there. It is not stated kasi hypothetically, theory lang ito ni Noam Chomsky. So in other words, LAD is more of theoretical idea. So it accounts for the ways in which children have an innate ability to understand language and syntax. So the LAD is meant to help us understand the many underlying processes that explain why we're so good at learning language or languages. So you can see it in the early age of the children on how can they develop their language. At makikita rin natin kung kaano sila kabilis mag-adapt ng language that they hear every day. So if they are hearing it every day, the tendency is they can adapt it, and then if they adapt it, they are using it, eventually they can understand the meaning of it. So that is the nativist perspective according to Noam Chomsky. Okay, so next we go for the cognitive development theory perspective by Jean Piaget. So language development occurs according to stages of cognitive development. So object permanence is an important stage of cognitive development that must occur before language appears. So language appears when one has the ability to represent symbols in the mind. This leads to the creation of words, which leads to the language acquisition. So Jean Piaget's theory of language development suggests that children use both assimilation, and accommodation to learn language. So when we say accommodation class, this is the act of fitting or adapting or the state of being fitted or adapted. When we say assimilation naman, this is the absorption of new ideas into an existing cognitive structure. So Jean Piaget's theory of language development suggests that children use both assimilation and accommodation to learn language. So assimilation is the process of changing one's environment to place information into an already existing schema or idea. When we say accommodation is the process of changing one's schema to adapt to the new environment. So Piaget believed that children need to first develop mentally before language acquisition can occur. So according to him, children first create mental structures within the mind or our schemas, and from these schemas, language development happens. So according to Jean Piaget's theory naman, it underlies his theory of cognitive development, di ba? So, kung naalala ninyo yung cognitive development ni Jean Piaget, may kaugnayan po siya dito. But, we are just using the assimilation and accommodation when we talk about the language development. Kasi according to Jean Piaget, children, the children needs to develop first their mentally. Parang kailangang ma-develop yung mental capabilities muna nila in order for them to learn the language itself na naririnig po nila. So, unlike kay Noam Chomsky, that saying na innate na yung language development natin when we are young, kapag nasa early age po tayo, kay Jean Piaget, he explains that children must learn, must form, or must first develop his or her mental ability in order for the language development to be developed. So, parang ang punto dito ni Jean Piaget, kailangan naiintindihan muna nila yung language bago nila ito ma-develop. Okay, so let's go for the Behaviorist Perspective by B.F. Skinner. So language is taught through various reinforcement in the environment. Infants learn appropriate responses and behavior which lead towards language development. So as this perspective relies heavily on reinforcement, this perspective cannot explain the reasoning behind children's made-up words. So B.F. Skinner believed that children learn language through operant conditioning. That children receive rewards for using language in a functional manner. So, B.F. Skinner believed that children learn language through operant conditioning. So, in other words, children receive rewards for using language in a functional manner. For an example, a child learns to say the word drink when he or she is thirsty. So she receives something to drink, which reinforces her use of the word for getting a drink, and thus she will continue to do so. This follows the fourth term, contingency, that Skinner believed was the basis of language development. Motivating operations, discriminative stimuli, response, and reinforcing stimuli. So Skinner also suggested that children learn language through imitation of others, prompting, and shaping. So when we say shaping class, this is a method of positive reinforcement of behavior patterns in operant conditioning. So gaya ng kay Jean Piaget, if you remember the theory of B.F. Skinner about operant conditioning, so sinasabi niya dito that children learn a certain language depending on the reward that he or she can get. So, ang example dito is the word drink. So, when the child said na drink, ang ibibigay sa kanya is yung iinumin niya. So, it leads to the rewards that whenever he or she says that he or she wants drink, meron siyang makukuhang maiinom. So that is the perspective of B.F. Skinner when in terms of language development. Palaging may positive reinforcement in order for the child or for specific children to learn about language. Just like, for example din, kapag sinabi nilang food, I want food. Kapag sinabi yun ng bata, kapag sinabi niyang I want food, immediately, bibigyan siya ng food. So, may positive reinforcement doon kasi meron siyang makakain at yung food na kakainin niya is nagmula doon sa word na sinabi niyang food. So, parang ganoon lang yun. Children learn the language based on the rewards na makukuha niya doon sa language or doon sa word na sinabi niya. Okay, next theory class is the Interactionist Perspective by Lee Vygotsky. So this perspective believes that language is acquired through social interaction in the environment, not reinforcement. So social interaction is the most important in acquiring skills. Vygotsky theorized that social interaction is important in helping children acquire language according to societal and cultural norms of their community. So, Lev Vygotsky's theory of language development focused on social learning and the zone of proximal development, or the ZPD. So, Lev Vygotsky's theory of language development focused on social learning and zone of proximal development. So, the ZPD is the level of development obtained when children engage in social interactions with others. It is the distance between the child's potential to learn and the actual learning that takes place. So, Vygotsky's theory also demonstrated that Piaget underestimated the importance of social interaction in development language. So, Piaget and Vygotsky's theories are often compared with each other, and both have been used successfully in the field of education. So, class dito, although magkakaiba sila ng perspective when in terms of language development, it is clearly stated naman that in the field of education, all these perspective or these theories are have been used successfully. So, in the interactionist perspective of Lev Vygotsky, it simply implies the social interaction na pwedeng the social interaction of the children na pwedeng mag-develop ng kanyang language. So, sinabi nga dyan, according to societal and cultural norms of their community. So, in the environment of the children, na meron siya, anuman ang language or words na palagi niyang naririnig doon sa environment na yon, the tendency is maa-adapt niya yun. And then, ang maganda doon is, kung lahat ng words na naririnig niya is positive, it is very, it is very clear that all the words that children nasasabihin ng batang yun is all positive. Kasi yun yung naririnig niya sa, environment niya, sa community niya mismo. Pero ang problema dyan, kapag yung language or yung word na naririnig niya sa community or sa surroundings niya is puro negative, the tendency is ganun din yung sasabihin ng bata. So, kahit na hindi niya naiintindihan yung meaning nun, kung ganun yung palagi niyang naririnig, yun din ang maririnig mo sa kanya. Kasi nga, bata yan, nagde-develop yan ng language. So, as early as the children, turuan natin sila ng mga positive words. Kasi in Lev Vygotsky's theory, it talks about the community and the people that surrounds the children. So social interaction between the children and the people around him or her is very important in the development of language. Kasi kung ano yung naririnig niya, kung ano yung tinuturo natin bilang mas mga nakatatanda, yun yung maa-acquire niya hanggang sa as the child grows on his or her own. So we have the social interaction in this Lev-Vygotsky's theories. So parang ganun din sa may cognitive development ni Lev-Vygotsky that it explains there the social interaction that will have definitely can affect our cognitive development. So ganun din sa language development, the social interaction of the children has a big impact on the development of his or her language. So next is the stages and speech development. So we have 4 stages. We have primitive, naive, egocentric, and ingrowth. Okay, so first, let's have primitive or natural stage. So this is characterized by these non-intellectual speech functions. So we have emotional release, social reactions, and substitutes for objects and desires. So primitive speech class, this stage covers the birth up to 2 years. So this is a period where the child will learn, imitate words, tries to name the object, will begin to speak, and emotionally react by crying or socially responds by laughing. So in this stage class, speech functions of a child is being developed. Not totally being developed na kaya na niyang magsalita or makipag-communicate sa ibang tao, but he or she can imitate words that naririnig niya sa paligid niya, or pwede rin namang makipag-communicate through emotional reaction. So he can cry or he can laugh, depending on the emotions that the child or the baby is feeling at that moment. Okay, next we have naive psychology. So children discover that words can have a symbolic function, and they display this discovery by frequently asking what things are called. So naive psychological, so this stage is from 2 to 4 years old. So words are used as a symbol, are fully understood to express the objects, and will expand their knowledge to identify more objects around their environment. So for example, class, kapag nakahawak sila ng ball, so ball is a round or a circle object. So kapag nakikita nila yung ball, ang tendency, ang sasabihin nila, it is a circle. Kasi si ball is a round object that represent the shape of a circle. So that is the naive psychology. Yung symbolic function ang pinag-uusapan dito, class. Ganon din kapag nakakakita sila ng anong tawag na ito? Kakakita sila ng aside from ball na example, another example is yung heart. Okay. So, pag nakakita sila ng heart, the tendency, ang sasabihin nila, it is color red. Because all heart that, yung mga tinuro ng mga magulang or the people around him or her saying that the color of the heart is color red because it pumps blood. So, the tendency, the children, every time he or she sees a heart, ang ikukulay niya doon, pagdating niya sa pagdating niya sa time na papasok na siya sa school, ang ikukulay niya doon is red. Okay, next is egocentric speech. So, takes the form of a running monologue that accompanies the child activities, whether the child works alone or beside others. So, egocentric stage, so this is from 4 to 7 years old. So, children will talk louder to be heard or seeking attention, and rational thinking will set to solve problems or perform a task. So, in egocentric speech class, children now can talk louder to seek attention. So, parang kapag hindi natin sila pinapansin, kasi nakagawa sila ng hindi maganda, or pinagalitan natin sila, the tendency is they will talk loud for you to get, for them to get your attention. So, that is egocentric speech. Next, and last is the in-growth stage. So, children, no. I have another example pa pala doon sa egocentric speech. So, this is typically the type of speech found in 3 or 4 to 7 years old. It serves as a bridge between the primitive and highly public social speech of the first stage and the more sophisticated and highly private inner speech of the third stage. So, in this stage class, children often talk to themselves. Yun. Regardless of someone listening to them. So, children in this stage class often talk to themselves. Kasi, di ba, sabi ko nga kanina, pag nag-talk sila ng malakas, tapos hindi mo sila pinansin, ang tendency, kakausapin nila yung sarili nila. With or without person to listen to them. So, they think out loud in attempt to guide their own behavior. So, they may speak about what they are doing as they do it. So, they reason that language must be spoken if it is a direct to their behavior. For an example, a child in a school who counts out loud one block at a time, saying each number as he or she goes along to get 5. So, for example, nagka-count siya ng 1 to 5 sa sarili niya. So, kapag palagi niyang ginagawa yon, ang tendency na memorize niya, and then, eventually, malalaman niya that he already knows how to count 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. So, kapag may mga ganun kasing bata, kapag nagsasalita sila ng malakas, mas pumapasok sa isip nila kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng sinasabi nila. Meron din naman yung kapag kinakausap nila yung sarili nila mismo, parang tinuturuan nila yung sarili nila, yun din yung mentally way ng pag-develop nila ng language in their mental aspects. So, may mga ganun. So, it depends on the child kung ano yung perception nila sa pag-determine ng mga words na sinasabi nila. So, they can talk aloud or they can talk on themselves with or without listening to them. So, last is the in-growth stage. Children learn to manipulate language in their heads in the form of soundless speech. So, thinking by means of logical memory that employs inner science of solving problems. So, in-growth stage is about 8 years onwards. This is the stage where the child will speak less and internalize more using private speechless. So, this is the final stage of speech development. It is inner, soundless speech. This is the type of speech used by the older children and adults. This type of speech allows us to direct our thinking and behavior. Once one has reached this final stage, they are able to engage in all forms of higher mental functions. In this stage, one is able to count in one's head, use logical memory, inherent relationship, and inner science. So, in the last stage class of speech development, we can now develop yung soundless speech dito. Yung nagsasalita na lang tayo in our mind. So, ganun din sa mga bata class, from 8 years old and above, natututo na rin silang magsalita ng sa isip lang nila. Parang kunyari, sabihin natin galit sila sa mommy and daddy nila kasi pinagalitan sila. Instead of talking aloud from themselves, ang ginagawa nila is nagsasalita sila, oo, pero sa isip na lang nila. Sabihin na natin, nagagalit sila sa parents nila, but in their mind. Kasi ang tendency, kapag nag-speak aloud sila, baka pwedeng pagalitan ulit sila, or yun nga, nadidevelop na rin sa kanila yung soundless speech. Okay, so class, before we move doon sa discussion ng Module 11, may nakalimutan ako doon sa Module 10. So, it is the table given in the soft copies na meron kayo sa Module number 10. So, it is the table 10.1, the language development chart. So, the following timeline given in your module is an overview of the ages at which children generally acquire language. So, makikita ninyo doon, class, na in the timeline or in every age of a children, meron yung specific language development that a children or a child can develop. Okay, so now let's move for the discussion of module number 11. So, konti lang ito, class, kaya sinama ko na siya sa module number 10. So, module number 11, so for introduction, it is recognized that before learning how to read and write, children already acquire knowledge and skills that are somewhat related to their reading and writing development, which serves as the basis for the recent change in the perspective of the development of reading and writing in young children. This chapter emphasizes the relation between its visual input and sound and sign language and the ease with which these books can be used in many one-to-one interactions. So at the end of the module, class, students should be able to attain these following objectives: generate possible uses of local literature and providing quality learning experience, discuss issues related to emergent literacy, survey children's books and discuss the storyline and main characters, create a children's books and using the concepts learned from the chapter. Okay, so for the content of module number 11, class, we will tackle also the chapter 11, which entitles Emergent Literacy. So, emergent literacy knowledge as a continuum of development. So, emergent literacy knowledge refers to what the children learn about reading and writing before they are considered as readers and writers, while emergent literacy skills are the ways that children demonstrate knowledge. So, emergent literacy is the term used to describe the reading and writing experiences of young children before they learn to write and read conventionally. So, emergent literacy begins at birth, regardless of whether or not a child has a disability. So, for older emergent literacy learners, it is important to keep all activities age respectful. Emergent literacy is commonly defined as the behavior of reading and writing that lead to conventional literacy and comprises all the actions, understandings, and misunderstandings of learners engaged in experience that involve print creation or use. So in emergent literacy, class, it talks about the reading and writing experiences of a young children. How can they develop their reading and writing experiences? So next is the timing of emergent literacy stage. So the emergent literacy stage begins at birth, and for normal developing children, it is expected to last until the age 5 before entering the school. As children enter the school, they are now subjected to the use of formal instruction and reading and writing. So, emergent literacy stage denotes the period of time during which children acquire a variety of emergent literacy knowledge and skills. The approximate timing of the stage for typically developing children is based on the concept of reading readiness, which suggests that during preschool years, there is a period of time in which children develop skills necessary for reading and writing. So, in the timing of emergent literacy stage, class, this is the process on how are we going to teach the children's regarding on how to read and how to write pag nasa school na sila. Kasi dito sa mga emergent literacy, this is learning about reading and write of the children kahit wala sa school. So, or pwede ring matuto silang magsulat at magbasa kahit meron silang disability. Pero dito sa timing of emergent literacy, this is what teachers are doing kapag ka nagtuturo sila ng reading and writing sa mga preschool years. Next is perspectives on the emergent literacy. So, in categorizing frameworks for emergent literacy, there are three main perspectives: a developmental perspective, a components perspective, and an environmental influence perspective. So, just like in the language development class na may theories at perspective din ito, ganun din ka emergent literacy. There are three perspectives that we are going to talk about. We have the developmental component and environmental perspective regarding emergent literacy stage. Okay, so first, we will talk about the developmental perspective. So, first theory is the Goodman 1986 framework. So, this framework describes 5 areas in which children's knowledge and skills progress in developing the roots of literacy. So, these are print awareness and situational context, print awareness and discourse, functions and forms of writing, oral language to talk about written language, metacognitive and metalinguistic awareness about written language. So first, we have the print awareness and situational context. Can observe when the child begins to learn and recognize his or her environment. So print awareness class is a child's earliest introduction to literacy. Children with print awareness understand that print has different functions depending on the context in which it appears. So for example, the menus or the list of the food choices, a book tell a story, a sign can announce, a favorite restaurant, and a warn of dangers. So print awareness class, parang nadidevelop dito yung mental capabilities ng isang bata at natututunan niya na yung mga print na nakikita niya or the symbol na nakikita niya is mayroong meaning. Next, letter B, we have the print awareness in discourse. Occurs when the child is beginning to be exposed to print in books, magazines, tabloids, and electronic sources in which the child learns that each symbol that he or she sees in print serve a particular purpose. Child then learns to manipulate media that they are being exposed to, like turning the pages of a book from left to right. So, discourse structure awareness is often associated with a reading strategy or set of strategies. For example, recognizing the main ideas, inferring connections among patterns, recognizing organizational patterns in text, and identifying typical genre features of a text. So, in print awareness in discourse class, it is a this is when the child learns to understand that all prints na nakikita niya in books, in magazine, in tabloids, or even in electronic sources, kasi gumagamit na tayo ngayon ng laptop, even tablets, yung mga nakikita niya doon na prints or yung mga letters na nakikita niya doon, na nagiging aware siya na meron itong ibig sabihin. But not totally na alam niya na kung ano yung ibig sabihin nito. Kung palagi niyang nakikita, palagi niyang naririnig, yun. The tendency is, malalaman niya kung anong ibig sabihin ng print na iyon or certain print na iyon. Or for example, palagi nilang pinupuntahan yung restaurant na Jollibee. So kapag nakikita niya yung mukha ni Jollibee, alam niya na doon silang palaging kumakain. So yung mindset ng bata kapag kunyari nasa sasakyan pa lang, tapos makikita niya yung way ng sasakyan nila is papasok sa Jollibee, yung mindset ng bata ay kakain na naman kami. So kakain na naman kami sa favorite restaurant nila, which is Jollibee. So, ganun din sa McDo, ganun din sa Chowking. Kasi, di ba, meron silang signages, meron silang specific logos na nakalagay na doon sa mismong store or doon sa mismong restaurant, doon sa mismong pagkain. So, yun. Yung print na yun, yung symbol na yun is natatandaan ng bata kapag kapalagi niyang nakikita. Next is, we have the functions and forms of writing. So, begins when the child writes by scribbling or drawing lines that represent letters. So, this highlights the fact that writing is the principal representation of language, thoughts, and facts. So, functions of forms of writing. So, this is where the child learns to write. So, it is not specifically na marunong na siyang mag-write, but in terms of writing, drawing lines, ganyan, or natututo pala siyang magsulat ng mga shapes. So, kapag natuto na siya na magsulat ng mga lines or ng shapes, eventually, may re-represent din ito yung mga letters. And then eventually, malalaman din niya na yung sinusulat niya is letter A, letter B, letter C na, ang tawag ganito, sa pamamagitan ng mga lines or yung mga unang lines na natutunan niyang isulat. Next is letter D. We have the oral language to talk about written language. So this occurs when the child begins to understand that print has functions and he or she may begin to talk about it. A child may say that books convey stories through the use of words and pictures. So in here, class, it is the time that the child or the children can understand now the print na nakikita niya. So pwede na niyang masabi na yung libro na hinahawakan niya is ganito yung story. Kung sino-sino yung mga character doon, nasasabi na rin niya. So this is the time that the children can now understand the print written in the books. Next is metacognitive and metalinguistic awareness about written language. So this is when the child understands literacy terms and uses words to describe what he or she is reading. So yun nga, kapag naintindihan na ng bata yung mga print sa libro at nasasabi na rin niya na meron itong ibig sabihin, he or she can now convey the words or he can now create a new word to describe yung mga natutunan niya doon sa libro na yun, using those prints na nabasa niya. Okay, next is the McCormick and Maison 1986 framework. So, this framework devised by McCormick and Maison suggests that there is a hierarchy of knowledge and skills when learning to read that children progress through. So, another framework for the emergent literacy stage was offered by the McCormick and Maison in 1986. So, they suggested that children's progress to a hierarchy of knowledge and skills learning to it. So, this hierarchy are as follows. We have the functions of print, form of print, and the coordination of the form of print and function of print. So, first, let's talk about functions of print. So, children's understand of literacy starts as being context-dependent, wherein children may start to read environmental print but are not able to read same exact environmental print in other situations. So, the first level class is the function of print. So, the perception of literacy by children is context-dependent, specifically close connected with the environment which the print occurs. So, they begin to read environmental prints like street signs, but in various circumstances, they might not be able to read the same words. So, for example, class, yung mga street signs na nakikita nila, possible na nababasa nila yon kasi yun yung street signs na palagi nilang nakikita. Pero kapag kayong sign na yon is nakita nila sa ibang lugar, sabihin na natin nakita nila sa isang building, there is a high possibility that they cannot understand yung meaning nun. Kasi hindi nila ito nakita sa daan. For an example, yung mga signages na nakikita natin or nakikita ng bata kapag ka nagbabiyahe siya, pwedeng maintindihan niya agad yun kapag ka ituturo ng mga magulang niya. Pero kapag ka nakita niya ito sa ibang lugar, sabi ko nga kanina sa building, the tendency is kahit na parehas ng itsura, parehas ng symbol, parehas ng print, kapag ka nakita niya ito sa ibang lugar, pwedeng hindi niya maagad maintindihan na parehas lang pala ng meaning yung symbol na nakita niya in different areas or in different place. So children learn at this stage that linguistic terms can be interpreted in written form. In any way, children may understand that print has a function. So yun nga, kapag ka na-explain natin sa kanila that it has the same meaning even though there are found in different place, doon nila malalaman na prints have a meaning or symbols have a meaning depending on the area kung nasaan man ito. Okay, next is we have letter B, form of print. So since the child is now centered on the forms of print rather than the functions of print, which enable them to apply phonetic analysis in which they learn about the structures of print rather than being context dependent, they now learn about grapheme, phoneme, and experiment through the use of their increased reading exposure. So class, dito naman sa form of print, when children learn about grapheme, phoneme, correspondences, and begin to experiment this understanding through increased reading exposure and invented spelling, so they have reached this second level of emergent literacy. So here, class, phonetic analysis may be extended to written words because they attention to print changes form, function to form. So children begin to learn about the structure of printed words through letters, sound comprehension rather than relying solely on contextual indication provided by images or environmental conditions. So for example, is the street signs or restaurant logos. So yun nga, parang kanina class, kapag palagi nilang nakikita yung logos or yung nakikita nila palagi yung signs, the tendency is alam na nila kung anong ibig sabihin nito. So they can now analyze that the letters of the print or the letter of the symbol na nakikita nila doon is may ibig sabihin. So dito na nagkakaroon ng form yung print na nakikita nila. Na parang kapag gagamitin din nila yung mga words na nakikita nila, it may, it may give them the idea na meron itong ibig sabihin. So, in the logos or in the signs na lagi nilang nakikita, malaki yung chance na mas matatandaan nila kung ano yung ibig sabihin nito. Okay, next is we have the coordination of the form of the print and function of print. So this is the combination class. Since children in this stage have now skills for both form and function, they can now use it simultaneously in order for them to read. So they now have clearer and more efficient ways to decode words and also give attention to word meanings. So during the final coordination stage of the emergent literacy hierarchy, children continue to reapply their knowledge to print function and print form. Since children learn simpler and more acute ways of interpreting the words such as by noting orthographic redundancy and phonologic patterns, they are able now to give more attention to word meanings. So in this stage, in order for the children to read, both abilities in printing and forms, just as conventional reader do, although McCormick and Maison did not explicitly address changes in children's conceptual language about reading process, their hierarchy indicates that the creation of reading processes underlying builds under print function. So in coordination of form of print and function of print class, this is the combination now of the functions and the form of print. So if the children know the functions of the print, he or she can now form that those prints na nakikita niya ay may ibig sabihin. Na kung magsasama-samahin yung mga print or yung letters na nakikita niya is may ibig sabihin. It can form a word that has a meaning. So, according to McCormick and Maison class, the functions of print and the form of the print has a high impact on the language development of a children. So, how they see the form, how they see the print, kung paano natin tinuro yun sa kanila, yun yung matatandaan nila sa mga print at forms or letters na palagi nilang nakikita. Okay? So, next. Okay, class. So, we still have two developmental perspective. We have the Stroman and Mates 2000 framework, the Van Cleek framework. And for the components perspective, we also have the Storch and Whitehurst 2002 framework and the Van Cleek 1998 to 2003. So for the child and environmental influences perspective naman, we have two framework. We have the Norton 1955 and the Wasik and Hendrickson 2004 framework. So class, these three has a separate video recorded discussion to be given to you. So, it is not indicated na in this discussion kasi it will prolong the video recorded that I have prepared for you. So, kapag ganun kasi class, ang tendency, baka hindi nyo natapusin, kasi ang haba-haba ng na-record ni ma'am, hindi na namin matatapos. So, ang ginawa ko is, naghanap ako ng ibang discussion to give to you to discuss the following perspective na nakikita nyo po dyan sa screen. So, if ever class, natatapos nyo na ito, you can also watch the second video in order for you to have a more understanding, a more deeper understanding, and lots of examples given there para maintindihan natin lahat itong mga developmental perspective na ito regarding language development. But to sum up it class, to give you a summarization, all this perspective naman talks about language development, on how children develop a language. Although, yung ibang framework pare-parehas, yung iba nagsasabi na it has a variation of the cultural, dun sa mga peoples that surrounds them, it has the same point that children can acquire language at the early age of the children. So, yun nga lang class, it depends on the perspective, it depends on the theories that that the children yung mga perspective na ito, depende doon sa mga children na mai-encounter din natin in the future. But I think, yes, may mga BEd pala tayo. For the BEd students, so you can use this perspective class in order for you to know, to identify kung ano na yung language development ng isang bata once na pumasok na siya sa school. Kasi pagdating naman na niyan sa high school at sa kolehiyo, yung language development na malaki ay high na. Parang na-reach na niya yung pinaka-peak ng language development niya. But in elementary years, specifically in the kindergarten, yun. Doon natin makikita on how children develop their language development kapag ka nasa school na sila. Kasi iba yung language development sa bahay, iba rin yung language development pagdating sa school. So, this perspective talks about all on how a children develop a certain language. Okay, so class, thank you for listening. Um, Again, this video recorded discussion class talks about the two last module for the midterm. We have the module number 10 and module number 11. So before we end, let me read these two quotations. Knowledge of language is the doorway to wisdom, according to Roger Bacon. The child begins to perceive the world not only through his eyes, but also through his speech. So it is by Lev Vygotsky. So again, class, thank you for listening and have a great day ahead.